The news broke like a thunderclap, reverberating across the country and around the world. In an era already defined by political polarization and economic uncertainty, few expected the Supreme Court to weigh in so decisively on a matter that had shaped global trade for years. The United States Supreme Court declared former President Donald Trump's global tariffs unconstitutional, overturning a policy that had been fiercely defended and bitterly contested since its inception. The ruling, delivered just before Wall Street opened, sent shockwaves through global markets. Investors, analysts, and business leaders scrambled to interpret the implications, knowing that the decision would ripple far beyond America's borders. Financial centers from Tokyo to New York erupted in volatility as traders scrambled to process the decision. Overnight, billions of dollars shifted in value, and the world's largest economies braced for aftershocks. The tariffs, a cornerstone of Trump's economic policy, had reshaped global supply chains and ignited fierce debates about protectionism versus free trade. For years, industries from steel to agriculture had been forced to adapt, with some thriving and others struggling under the new rules. Now, with a single pronouncement, the highest court in the United States had dismantled that entire framework. The legal reasoning was clear. The executive branch had overstepped its constitutional authority, and the balance of power had to be restored. On trading floors, chaos reigned as algorithms and humans alike tried to price in this new reality. Markets whipsawed, and uncertainty reigned as investors tried to gauge which sectors would benefit and which would suffer. The court's decision struck at the heart of executive power over international commerce, drawing a line in the sand for presidential authority. Legal scholars immediately began debating the long-term implications for future administrations and the limits of unilateral action. For businesses paying billions in what the court now deemed illegal taxes, it was vindication. For the policy's architects, a stunning repudiation. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle rushed to respond, some celebrating the decision, others warning of economic instability. The fallout will touch everything from grocery prices to factory jobs, marking a new and uncertain chapter in global economic relations. Consumers, workers, and executives alike now face a period of adjustment, as the rules of international trade are rewritten in real time. As the dust settles, the world watches the United States navigate a path forward in a landscape it just upended. The Supreme Court's bombshell has not only rewritten the rules, it has set the stage for a new era of debate, diplomacy, and economic transformation. To truly grasp the shockwaves that followed, we first need to understand the foundation these policies were built upon. The roots of the tariffs go deeper than a single administration. They tap into decades of economic anxiety and political debate about America's place in the global economy. Trump's tariffs became the centerpiece of his America First agenda, a bold move designed to reverse years of growing trade deficits and what he called unfair trade deals. The message was clear. It was time to put American workers and industries first, even if it meant upending the status quo. By making imports more expensive, the administration hoped to encourage consumers and businesses to buy American-made goods. The goal was to revive domestic manufacturing, create new jobs, and reduce the country's dependence on foreign suppliers for essential products. In 2025, Trump invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, to impose sweeping tariffs on trillions of dollars in imports. These measures specifically targeted critical goods like pharmaceuticals and semiconductors, industries seen as vital to national security and economic resilience. The administration argued that these actions were about more than just economics. They were about protecting national security and reclaiming American independence in a rapidly changing world. Supporters saw this as a necessary step to ensure the country's future prosperity and safety. Critics, however, warned that tariffs are essentially a tax on American consumers and businesses. They cautioned that higher prices could fuel inflation, spark trade wars with key partners, and ultimately hurt the very people the policy aimed to protect. Many business leaders and economists argued the policy disrupted efficient supply chains, raised costs for manufacturers, and made U.S. companies less competitive on the global stage. The uncertainty left many industries scrambling to adapt. With the nation divided and the stakes higher than ever, the stage was set for a fierce legal and economic battle that would shape America's future for years to come. The legal fight was about more than economics. It was a constitutional showdown. The Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to set tariffs and taxes. Trump used IEEPA, a law meant for emergencies, to justify his sweeping tariffs, declaring the trade deficit a national threat. Plaintiffs argued this was an overreach, using emergency powers to bypass Congress and impose a massive tax. Lower courts agreed, ruling the president had stretched the law beyond its intent. The Supreme Court was left to decide, was this a legitimate use of executive power or an unconstitutional grab? The answer would redefine the balance of power in American government. The Supreme Court's majority delivered a forceful defense of the separation of powers. They ruled that taxing and regulating commerce is Congress's job, not the president's. The justices drew a sharp line between temporary, targeted emergency actions and Trump's sweeping, long-term tariffs. The court found no clear language in IEAPA, granting the president such vast authority. The major questions doctrine featured prominently. Congress must speak clearly when delegating power on issues of huge economic significance. A chronic trade deficit, the court said, is not an extraordinary threat justifying emergency powers. To rule otherwise would let any president bypass Congress on economic policy. The decision reaffirmed, the president leads, but Congress legislates, especially on taxes. The Supreme Court's decision unleashed instant chaos and opportunity in global markets. Within minutes, trading floors from New York to Hong Kong erupted in a frenzy of activity, as investors scrambled to reposition their portfolios in response to the seismic shift. Stocks of major importers and retailers soared as investors anticipated relief from billions in tariffs. Companies that had struggled under the weight of trade barriers suddenly found themselves at the center of a buying spree, with share prices climbing at a pace not seen in years. The Dow Jones surged, reflecting optimism about lower costs and higher profits. Analysts predicted that consumer prices could fall, boosting spending and potentially fueling a new wave of economic growth. But not everyone cheered. Domestic industries protected by tariffs, like steel and aluminum, saw their shares plunge. For these sectors, the ruling threatened to erase years of hard-won gains, raising fears of layoffs and plant closures. The market split sharply, with winners and losers emerging in real time. The divide was stark, as fortunes shifted in a matter of hours, leaving some investors celebrating and others scrambling to limit their losses. Currency markets whipsawed, the dollar weakening as traders bet on a less protectionist America. The sudden shift in policy sent shockwaves through the foreign exchange world, with major currencies adjusting rapidly to the new outlook. Overseas, Asian and European markets rallied, especially companies battered by U.S. tariffs. International investors welcomed the move, seeing it as a chance to rebuild supply chains and restore lost business ties. The decision was seen as a de-escalation of the global trade war, prompting relief worldwide. Business leaders and policymakers expressed cautious optimism, hoping the ruling would mark the start of a more stable era for international commerce. For years, high trade barriers were the new normal. The court's ruling erased that assumption overnight. The global business community now faced a dramatically altered landscape, with old certainties swept away in a single stroke. The volatility reflected a massive recalibration as the world adjusted to a new economic reality. Investors, executives, and governments alike scrambled to understand the long-term implications of the court's decision. The tremors underscored the immense power and risk of unilateral trade policy. In a single moment, the Supreme Court had redrawn the map of global commerce, leaving markets to navigate uncharted territory. For American businesses, the ruling is a game changer. Importers, from small shops to multinationals, get immediate relief, lower costs, more capital to invest, and potential for new jobs. Domestic industries once shielded by tariffs now face tougher competition and must adapt quickly. For workers in those sectors, uncertainty returns as protective barriers vanish. Consumers are the biggest winners. With tariffs gone, prices on everything from electronics to clothing are expected to fall. It's like a tax cut for families, boosting purchasing power. American farmers, hit by retaliatory tariffs, may see foreign markets reopen as trade tensions ease. The ruling offers hope for a return to stable, mutually beneficial global trade. The world's response was swift and positive. Leaders in Europe and Asia welcomed the decision as a step toward normalizing trade relations. The ruling aligned with international consensus, reducing tensions and encouraging multilateral negotiations. Countries that imposed retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods now face pressure to roll them back. China reacted with cautious optimism, seeing a chance for healthier trade ties. The decision strengthens global institutions like the WTO, reinforcing the value of rules-based dispute resolution. Advocates of international cooperation see the U.S. reigning in protectionism as a turning point. The world now watches to see how America re-engages with global trade frameworks. The Supreme Court's decision is more than a trade story. It's a reaffirmation of American democracy. It checks executive power, restoring Congress's constitutional role in economic policy. Future presidents will need to work with lawmakers, not act alone, to reshape trade. The ruling could bring more stable, predictable policies for businesses and trading partners. Globally, it signals a U.S. return to rules-based cooperation and modernized trade agreements. The decision won't solve all economic challenges, but it insists solutions come through democracy and international partnership. It's a testament to the enduring strength of American institutions, and a hopeful sign for the world.